Shocking incident. White officer slaps black man and discovers he is the new chief after 10 years. The sun blazed unforgivingly over Maplewood, an oppressive weight in the thick summer air. Officer Jack Reynolds stood guard at the entrance of the park, eyes scanning for trouble among the laughter of children and the chatter of families enjoying their weekend. But inside him, an unyielding storm brewed, pushing against the tides of accusation and guilt that had crept into his life like a stubborn weed. With family expectations clawing at him, duty, fidelity, honor, they had drilled it into him. Jack felt suffocated. Cops like him were supposed to be held to higher standards, yet here he was, a man wrestling with his own biases and the realization that every encounter could be a battle. A sudden anger swelled up inside him. People around him were talking in whispers, casting sideways glances. They spoke about Marcus Johnson, the man everyone knew had clawed his way back from a dark past, a motivation stronger than his own. Yet here he stood, feeling more like a puppet on strings rather than the law he vowed to protect. Emotions flared, the years of unchallenged prejudices screaming for a release, and the incident hit him like a freight train, a slap, a stinging realization, as he struck out, confusion boiling over into irresponsible actions. The sharpness of the contact reverberated through him more painfully than he could have imagined. Before he knew it, the faces of bystanders mirrored his own disbelief. Murmurs whipped through the crowd like wildfire. "Did he just?" one gasped, while another recoiled in horror. Jack's thoughts spiraled rapidly. He hadn't realized it until that very moment, but he had struck Marcus, the new chief of police, a man who had embarked on a journey of redemption, the very embodiment of overcoming the odds. News spread, and Jack felt the weight of every vacant stare on his back. Anger management issues. Their voices echoed in his mind, tauntingly drawing from the vowels of guilt. What if they branded him as he feared? A label that couldn't be erased. A cop, yes, but a racist? An outsider in a community he swore to protect, kept on the fringes by choices he made in a split second. Anxiety tightened its grip on him. Days turned into a prison. Rumors circulated like a bad episode of a cop drama. Conversations reduced to silent nods in local diners, the kind where the regulars shared coffee, and ideals were debated beneath the flickering lights. There was a deep chasm between him and the townsfolk he had sworn to serve. Each interaction was a reminder of his failings. His family's face loomed, expectations mixed with shame. At the public meeting, tension threaded through the room. Jack's pulse quickened with every uncertain breath he took. How would Marcus address him? Would he choose confrontation, or would he remain above the fray, above Jack? Fear mingled with the hope of redemption, a wavering line between camaraderie and division. They could either endure or emerge, but how? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The meeting simmered with mention of deeper issues, the devil hidden in the fabric of the town's history beginning to unravel. Jack's stomach twisted in knots. This moment, so critical, could either enforce the views he resisted or open a door to understanding. But before the air lightened, a new revelation sent shockwaves through everyone, long-buried secrets rising from their graves. Would Jack find the courage buried inside him to confront his demons or stay shackled by them? And as Marcus navigated his own storm, would he harness the power gifted to him or succumb to the anger they both felt, ripping apart the thin veil between them that could foster redemption? The room grew heavy with anticipation, leaving everyone yearning for the resolution that felt just out of reach. The following days felt like an eternity for Jack as he battled through fractured nerves and the noise of speculative whispers. Each morning, he would don his uniform with a sense of dread, as the weight of his actions clung to him like an ill-fitting garment. He had always believed in the law, in the sanctity of peacekeeping, but now he sensed something else lurking, the fragility of trust shattered beneath the weight of his recklessness. The public meeting reverberated in his mind, no matter how hard he tried to shake it off. He replayed the faces of his fellow officers, eyebrows creased with both worry and disdain. Their expressions sent darts of anxiety racing through him. Did they see him as a threat now? Did they sympathize or merely gawk at the spectacle of the fallen hero? With the incident fresh in everyone's minds, Jack began attending workshops about cultural competency and bias in policing. It felt like a self-imposed penance, though not devoid of inner resistance. Uncomfortably seated around a table with fellow officers and community leaders, he often felt like a wolf amid sheep, an outsider who, despite sharing their vocation, was grappling to reclaim his place. He listened as Marcus shared his story of redemption, how he had clawed his way back from criminality to lead with humility and integrity. In one poignant moment, he spoke about forgiveness, an act requiring both vulnerability and strength. Jack clenched his fists, a tumult of emotions clawing their way to the surface. Could he forgive himself? Did he deserve it? In one session, the facilitator encouraged the participants to reflect on their own biases, insisting that understanding oneself was crucial for meaningful change. Would he discover something abhorrent lurking beneath the surface? Would he be burdened by more guilt, or unearth hidden strengths he never knew existed? It felt like a tightrope he was walking, with every step a risk of tumbling into the abyss of his mind. As the weeks progressed, Jack unearthed cracks in his self-perception. He had long believed himself modeled from the noble fabric of law enforcement, adhering strongly to the ideals instilled in him during training. Yet reality had torn at those seams, revealing the caverns of ignorance he had avoided confronting. The weight of privilege settled heavily on his shoulders, sparking in him a desire to shift perspectives and become the change that was so desperately needed. But Old Town quickly became that mirror reflecting all he wished to deny. A confrontation with a community member, someone close to Marcus, brought everything to a fever pitch. The person challenged Jack directly, venom in their voice, confronting him about his actions and the implications behind them. Every accusation felt like an arrow, piercing through the defenses he had clung to for so long. Jack stood there, fixated on the ground, heart racing, emotions swirling with a sharp intensity. He knew he had to respond not with anger, but with the vulnerability Marcus had spoken about. He opened his mouth, crafting words meant to bridge the divide he had helped widen, yet they caught in his throat. Would he find the courage to step forward, to acknowledge his failings and seek genuine understanding, or would his past become an anchor, pulling him into the depths of despair? Each passing day demanded more from him, a test of his willingness to evolve, and when he finally spoke up, bearing the truth he had long hidden from himself, the silence that followed felt electric, hanging in the air, pregnant with tension as he braced for the reaction that was sure to come. What awaited him on the other side of this revelation? Would the community see him as a broken man seeking redemption, or merely a police officer without a badge of honor? As the world around him held its breath, Jack understood one simple truth: the moment of reckoning was finally upon him. But would it be enough to change the tides? The silence lingered, an enveloping shroud that weighed heavily on Jack's shoulders. He felt the eyes of the community member drilling into him, probing for sincerity. Suspicion diluted each word that formed in his mind as he stepped into the unfamiliar territory of vulnerability. In solitude he might have crafted a polished statement, a rehearsed apology, but now surrounded by witnesses his heart beat erratically as the thrumming pulse of shame echoed in his ears. "What I did was unforgivable," he started, words tumbling out uneasily. "I lost my way. I let anger and pride cloud my judgment." The sincerity felt raw, each admission slicing deeper than he anticipated. After what felt like eons, the moment shattered when the community member spat back. "You think words can erase the fear you instilled? You think we'll trust you again?" Jack swallowed, the bitterness of that confrontation coating his insides. He had anticipated hostility but had imagined a more palatable engagement. Instead, the wrath he faced felt like a torrent crashing against his fragile resolve. The question loomed large in his mind: was this acceptance truly possible, or was he faced with the insurmountable task of regaining what he lost? That night, Jack found himself in his tiny apartment, a hollow shell of regret swallowing him whole. Reflection morphed into scrutiny, and he could see his former self lurking in the shadows, confident, righteous, untouched by doubt. But that self no longer existed. He had traversed uncharted waters, drawn by the need to prove something to himself in the harsh light of failure. Compelled by an unyielding desire for clarity, he turned to a notebook, eyes scanning empty pages begging to be filled. He began jotting down thoughts, snippets of the reality he faced, reconnecting with the fabric of who he aspired to be. The ink flowed unevenly, mirroring the chaotic thoughts navigating his mind. Concepts of privilege emerged alongside ideas of reparation and understanding. A grappling with accountability anchored him. Every officer needs to understand the impact of their actions, he wrote, pausing to stare at the ceiling as if seeking haunting whispers from above. Accountability and growth create a lasting bond of trust. This realization fueled a drive deep within, igniting a flicker of hope that seemed to rise amid the suffocating darkness. He was at a crossroads. The workshops had unearthed discomforts, revealing insights about systemic inequities and biases he'd tightened his grip around for too long. By acknowledging them, could he reclaim his identity? Was it possible to emerge transformed, no longer a police officer confined by a badge but an advocate for justice? As weeks folded into each other, Jack embraced the discomfort, daring to confront the implications attached to the badge he wore. In each attempt to engage with members of the community, he extended genuine dialogue rather than well-crafted statements. It was messy. Some conversations led to harder truths, while others faded into uncomfortable silence. Then came the day Jack was faced with a decision that threatened to unravel his improvements. He learned of an incident involving an officer exhibiting the very traits he had vowed to combat. He watched as his colleagues navigated an escalating situation that drove home the humanity lost in calculations of authority. The choice was clear: speak up and confront the behavior that paralleled his past or remain silent, numbing his conscience. The memory of the community member's face flashed through his mind, a reminder of the distrust he faced. Jack clenched his fists, drawn tightly between the desire for acceptance and the pursuit of authentic change. Would he prioritize his image among his peers over the integrity of his core beliefs? As he made his way to the precinct, a swell of determination surged through him. The time had come to face the ghosts of his past, not just in himself, but in those too willing to overlook their own faults. His heart raced, a palpable indication of the stakes he was about to confront. But in that very moment, he understood that this was not merely about policing, it was about forging a path toward personal redemption and creating a new future for himself. What would become of him on this journey? As he approached the precinct, the weight of expectation in the air was thicker than ever. In choosing to stand up, would he be met with support or pushback, and how would it shape the man he was becoming? Jack's heart thudded like a bass drum as he entered the precinct, urgency clawing at his insides. The air, crackling with tension, was saturated with the scent of worn leather and unresolved conflicts. He passed familiar faces, but they felt like strangers now, barriers formed not by walls but by ideals that had begun to diverge. Questioning whether these colleagues were allies or adversaries gnawed at him. As he approached the briefing room, whispers floated through the corridor like ghostly echoes of skepticism and gossip. The incident reverberated through the ranks, casting shadows over his resolve. Each step was a silent negotiation with his past, and with every stride, doubt wrested control. Could he stand firm amidst an environment steeped in tradition and power dynamics? Inside the room, a visceral scene unfolded. Officers galloped through the details of an altercation, the atmosphere thickening with bravado. Jack leaned against the doorframe, absorbing the clash of voices. They painted a narrative, one he had once observed as taciturn acceptance but now felt disconcertingly out of place. He felt like an intruder in a world he longed to change. Another suspect escalating for no reason, a colleague remarked, while others nodded in agreement, their faces masks of self-righteousness. It was as though their memories had been selectively edited, and the humanity inherent in the situation had slipped into the shadows. The video footage played on a screen, revealing the reckless slap delivered by an officer, an act that twisted Jack's stomach. It was now or never. Stop! Jack's voice cut through the hushed indignation with a force he hadn't anticipated. The room fell silent. Eyes shifted toward him, a mixture of surprise and resentment pooling in the atmosphere. That's not how we handle our duties. We can't dehumanize our community. He felt their glares pierce his resolve, saw the way disbelief flickered across their faces. A defector had emerged, someone willing to challenge an unspoken code. Standing alone, he felt the weight of expectations crushed down, yet within him stirred an ember of conviction. The juxtaposition of fear and purpose coiled around his heart, each breath igniting his determination. "Jack, you know how things work here," another officer assertively replied, the challenge lingering in the air. "You really think one bad incident defines us?" "Not just one," Jack countered, finding strength in conviction. "It's a pattern, and we're a part of it. If we want to earn back trust, this has to change. Accountability starts with us." The tension morphed into something almost tangible, carving lines between ally and foe. As colleagues continued to question his authority and integrity, Jack's inner turmoil only sharpened. He considered their insights, weighing the validity of their experiences against his. Could a lone voice propel change, or would he be drowned out by their unwillingness to reflect? Amidst the divisive energy, Jack delved deeper into his own psyche. This was about more than just action. It was the essence of who he now aspired to be. The officer he was prideful and righteous had given way to someone seeking genuine, meaningful dialogue. Was he leaving this room without addressing the moral degradation he saw emerging at lightning speed? Then let us talk about it, he challenged, determined to convert their collective defensiveness into an opportunity for growth. Let us dissect our practices and open ourselves to vulnerability. We can't change what we refuse to acknowledge. The ensuing silence draped itself over the gathering like a pall. An uneasy feeling crackled beneath the surface. Jack sensed resentment morph into doubt within the ranks. As if awakening from a slumber, his colleagues began to contemplate their role in shaping an environment that so clearly failed them and the communities they served. But the weight of his words hung heavy in the air. He realized that in standing up, he had potentially severed ties to a system that had nurtured him, one he was now challenging head-on. Would his commitment to reforming policing truly alter their perspectives, or would he become a mere footnote in a narrative they were determined to uphold? The internal discomfort clawed at his insides as Jack awaited a response. Would this moment mark the beginning of change, or the end of Jack as he knew himself? And how far was he prepared to go in pursuit of a path laden with uncertainty? The answer teetered precariously on the edge of the ensuing silence. The precinct's undercurrents roared for resolution, and Jack stood at the crossroads of transformation both for himself and those around him. Was he ready to redefine his identity amidst the resistance, or would he retreat back into the shadows of privilege? The silence in the briefing room stretched on, heavy with tension, as Jack's heart raced, each beat amplifying his conviction. He could feel their scrutiny weighing on him, probing for weaknesses, searching for justification in their time-honored defenses. He had managed to fracture their complacency, but he did not yet know if he could construct anything new from the shards. Somewhere deep inside, a flicker of fear ignited. What if he was wrong? What if this effort to expose the cracks in their authority only led to isolation? Yet, he recalled the humanity lost behind that officer's strike, and his own urgency solidified into resolve. If he faltered now, he would not only fail himself, he would fail the principles he aspired to champion. After what felt like an eternity, a senior officer finally broke the contemplative silence. What you're suggesting is unprecedented. Are we really prepared for this kind of self-evaluation? The skepticism was crystal clear, but within that skepticism lay an unguarded invitation for dialogue a way in. We have to be. If we're truly committed to serving the community, we need to embrace accountability. It's not suffering but rather strength and vulnerability, he replied, the words flowing with newfound conviction. Several officers shifted uncomfortably, their guarded faces revealing a subtle fracture in their collective facade. It was a mere crack, yet cracks could deepen. Jack sensed an opportunity emerge from within the tension, the possibility of sparking a conversation that had long been overdue. What if we start with a small group? He proposed, heart racing. We can face our decisions head-on, confront our biases, and share experiences. We have to lay our vulnerabilities bare to truly understand what needs changing. He watched them pause, weighing his words like a makeshift scale. Some expressions shifted, fitting unfamiliar sentiments into the fray, while others maintained a resolute ideological stance. Yet there was a flicker in the room, a hesitant acknowledgement that Jack might be onto something. The idea encapsulated something electric. Transformative dialogues could arise from the discomfort he felt, and fostering meaningful discussion was far more fruitful than the cycle of blame. He envisioned an environment steeped not only in integrity but also in mutual growth. Could that, after all, be a foundation for the change that seemed so daunting? Suddenly, the door opened and Captain Wells entered. His towering frame commanded immediate attention, and the conversations murmured to a halt. "I've been listening," he said, eyeing the tension as he interjected himself into the tight circle of uncertainty. "You're right, Jack. We need new tactics, and we need to address how we act when confronted with integrity violations." Jack's heart lurched. The support from such a powerful figure was unexpected. Yet he also noticed the weight of expectation settling over him more than ever. Could he rise to this new challenge? This was beyond navigating his own moral uncertainties. This was about evangelizing a new culture within an organization notorious for its resistance to change. As the captain laid out potential strategies for a shift in culture, Jack felt a swell of ambition stirring within. Ideas began to flow, framing discussions around accountability, training reform, and community engagement. Each concept forged an image of hope as he envisioned a future characterized by partnerships rather than adversarial interactions. Yet as adrenaline coursed through his veins, not everything felt seamless. Shadows loomed and unspoken tension remained unmistakable, revealing that opposition was not only ideological but deeply rooted. Jack understood that the journey would be perilous and that loyalty to his ideals could isolate him further from colleagues who clung to their own truths. The room was beginning to change, but Jack realized this was just the beginning. A barrage of obstacles lay ahead, and the gravity of responsibility pressed down heavily upon him. He was building bridges, but would they withstand the storms to come? Jack locked eyes with one of his colleagues, Graham, his longtime partner. The familiar warmth had turned cold, replaced with skepticism. "You're risking everything," Graham mouthed silently, his expression an unspoken warning. The challenge loomed larger than Jack ever anticipated, and the uncertainty of the coming week threatened to engulf him. As conversations spiraled into potential plans and uncomfortable truths, Jack found himself wondering, was he ready to carry the ramifications of leadership, knowing that not everyone would walk the path he carved? The clarity of purpose fueled him as he ascended a steeper incline in this climb toward enlightenment. Would those around him ultimately question his motives or root for his success as their next chief? The tension felt unbearable. Jack took a deep breath, the air electric with tension and possibility. He had ignited a flame, now the stakes were higher than ever. Would the coming days prove to solidify his transformation or unravel him completely? The pressures were mounting, and Jack barely scratched the surface of a transformative journey ahead, one punctuated by direct confrontation with the fears and resistance of those he sought to lead. What awaited him at the precipice could either redefine policing or dismantle him from the inside out. In the days that followed, the air in the precinct grew thick with anticipation, as Jack navigated uncharted territory both professionally and personally. Each step echoed with the weight of his newfound ambition, and he was acutely aware that he was no longer merely an officer but a catalyst for change. Every glance exchanged during morning roll call seemed to whisper expectations, each familiar face a reminder of his mission's significance. As he dove into his plan, Jack organized small focus groups among the officers, hoping to create safe spaces where criticism and support could thrive. The initial sessions unfolded with a mix of skepticism and tentative engagement. While some officers contributed candidly, sharing their struggles with the everyday realities of policing, others remained walled off, their distrust palpable. Jack felt their reluctance in his bones, a physical manifestation of his own fears threatening to reemerge. "Why should we change?" one officer asked, drawing a response from the back of the circle. "Everything's fine as it is," Jack's breath hitched at the defiance simmering beneath that challenge, but he summoned his courage. It wasn't just about convincing everyone. It was about unraveling deep-seated beliefs one thread at a time. Because sometimes, fine isn't enough, he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. If we truly want to protect and serve, we should be transparent about our faults. He noticed nods of approval, mingled with frowns of rejection. The realization dawned on him that change, much like people's perceptions, would be gradual and stubborn. As Jack poured his evenings into building a framework for policy reform, he discovered something intriguing. The more he engaged, the more he unearthed hidden competencies within himself. In leading those discussions, he learned to articulate not only his ideas but also to navigate the emotional landscapes of his colleagues. Every question posed became a gateway, each reticence unveiled another layer of complexity. The experience broadened his perspective, transforming him from a mere participant in conversations to an architect of dialogue. But doubt still lurked. During a particularly charged session, Graham confronted him directly, crossing the threshold of professional hesitance into personal territory. "What kind of chief do you want to be, Jack?" he challenged, leaning forward, his brows furrowed. "The one who gets brutal honesty or the one who appeases?" The weight of the question settled around them, instilling a sense of urgency. Jack paused, considering the implications. "I want to be the chief who acknowledges flaws as a path to improvement. It's not about making friends, it's about fostering respect." For a fleeting moment, he saw flickers of recognition in Graham's steely eyes, an acknowledgement of vulnerability, perhaps, but it was clouded by unresolved loyalty to the status quo. The tension built a barrier between them, and Jack was left pondering whether his quest for integrity would alienate him from those he once considered allies. Later, as he prepared to leave the precinct, Jack was approached by a younger officer, hesitant but with a spark of curiosity igniting in her eyes. "I'm not sure I agree with everything, but I appreciate you wanting us to talk. It feels different." Her words warmed him, promising glimpses of the change he sought. Yet it also pinched at his heart how many others felt trapped by tradition and duty, standing in silent support but too fearful to voice it. With each passing day, Jack clung fiercely to the possibility of transformation. But as the days turned into sleepless nights filled with planning and proposals, the reality pierced through. This was not just another phase. His attempts to reform an institution layered in history of resistance were becoming a crucible. The fear of failure loomed large, and Jack wondered if he was prepared for the impending fallout, should the backlash begin to brew. As the weeks drew closer to an anticipated departmental meeting to unveil his proposals, Jack felt the tightening grip of anxiety. Would they embrace the vision he laid before them? Or would he merely open the floodgates to resentment and conflict? The moment of truth was creeping up on him, the air thick with tension and potential reckoning. How far would he be willing to stretch his ideals to elicit genuine change? Would he even have the chance to lead the charge, or would this revelation unravel all he had built? Stepping into the dimly lit office, Jack braced himself, knowing the real test of his resolve awaited at the end of the week. Could he rally the organization to step into the new paradigm he envisioned, or would he stand alone at the brink of transformation, watching as those around him retreated into their protective masks? The stakes were impossibly high, and Jack knew, deep down, that if he faltered, it wasn't just his ambition at risk, but the fragile thread of accountability he dared to weave in a world desperate for change. The day of the departmental meeting dawned with an uneasy energy, as if the precinct itself was holding its breath. Jack shuffled papers on his desk, glancing at the clock as the minutes ticked away, amplifying his urgency. The threshold of his ambition lay just ahead, yet the path felt paved with shifting sands. He meticulously reviewed his notes, soaking in every detail, every statistic he had gathered, each word honed to impart his goals clearly and effectively. Assembling the officers in the conference room, he noticed the varying expressions among them, some curious, others skeptical, and a few with a hardened resolve that made Jack's pulse quicken. He spread his hands before him, a gesture not only of invitation but of vulnerability. "Thank you all for being here today. Some of you may know why we're gathered, while others might still be questioning why I even bother. A mix of grumbling and murmurs filled the air, underscoring the subtle divide. Hadn't his efforts to encourage dialogue indicated he was there for them? Yet he remained acutely aware of the underlying currents of hostility. Today, I want to talk about what we can do better. I believe every officer here genuinely wants to make a difference, and that's why it's essential we open ourselves to new approaches in how we serve and protect. His voice, though steady, quivered at the edges when he caught Graham's sharp gaze. Jack, with all due respect, Graham interrupted, the tension in the room thickening around them. Are we not doing enough already? Why disrupt the equilibrium? The familiar challenge rang out like a gunshot, silencing whispers and redirecting attention. Jack paused, swallowing the knot of fear that tightened in his throat. Isn't it possible that enough is simply a ceiling we should seek to break through? If we truly value the community we serve, shouldn't we be willing to examine ourselves critically and embrace change? As Jack spoke, he reveled in the assertive cadence of his own voice, and unfamiliar but captivating power surged within him. The discourse wasn't just about policies or procedures. It became a crucible of identity, testing the very fabric of who they were as officers. His unease began to morph into determination, momentarily blinding him to the resistance he still faced. More officers chimed in, some supporting Jack's initiative, while others voiced concerns about loyalty and tradition. Each voice was another brushstroke on the canvas of doubt that painted the room. Jack realized that today, he wasn't just presenting proposals. He was conducting a symphony of beliefs. As he articulated his vision, a sudden commotion at the back of the room shattered the critical momentum he had built. A loud slap echoed through the air, a shocking incident that froze the words on Jack's tongue. A white officer had just struck a black man, someone new to their ranks, a rookie no one seemed to know well. The unmistakable gasp of the crowd thrummed through him, visceral and paralyzing. Jack dashed forward, breaking free from the stunned silence that momentarily gripped him. He felt the turmoil churning within, the deep-seated moral conflict rising to the surface. Here lay a stark embodiment of the very changes he was advocating. "What just happened?" he demanded, his heart racing. The room devolved into a cacophony of outrage and confusion, accusations strung together with incredulity as fists clenched and voices rose. Jack's mind raced, trying to compose the chaos spiraling around him. He wrestled with the implications. Here was an urgent confrontation of everything he feared, that the institution he was trying to reform was alive with tensions far deeper than simple misunderstandings. He turned to the officers, the weight of the situation pressing against him. "This is exactly why we need to talk. Not just among ourselves, but honestly. Today is not merely about proposals, it's about a reckoning. Would they see the link between their actions and the change he envisioned? Would this moment galvanize them, or would it serve as a final wedge in the division he sought to mend?" Jack felt an awakening within, an echo of his earlier question to Graham reflecting back at him. Who was he willing to become in this moment amidst chaos? As the melee slowly subsided, the rookie looking bewildered, the officer aghast at his own actions, Jack stood poised, aware that this ordeal might provide the catalyst he needed. Would they rise together, or would he emerge from this meeting facing not only skepticism but hostility? The path ahead shimmered with potential, yet the question flickered in his mind: was he ready to lead through the tumultuous storm he had, unintentionally, set into motion? Jack inhaled deeply, prepared to step into the eye of the storm, knowing the clarity he sought was closer than ever but threatened by the very foundations of his convictions. He took a breath, his voice steadier now as new resolve wrapped around him. "We must confront what happens between us so we can redefine who we are together. Are you with me, or will we continue walking paths that divide?" The ensuing silence felt charged, pregnant with unspoken answers as the room prepared to respond not just to his words, but to the very essence of who they were as officers. Jack stood at the forefront of the conference room, the thick air pressing against his chest, as the once roiling emotions began to coalesce into something unforeseen. The officers, his comrades in blue, had turned from chaos to a liminal space of contemplation. The implications of the incident rippled through them like a shockwave. He had expected debates over policies, perhaps even resistance, but a physical confrontation opened up Pandora's box of fears, assumptions, and contradictions in ways he had not foreseen. Men and women, I know this is shocking, but we can't shy away from the truths sitting right in front of us, Jack continued, his voice steadying with each word. Each glance from his colleagues felt heavier, weighted with their histories, beliefs, and fears. What just happened is a reflection of the deeper divisions we must address. Let us not turn back to silence. As he spoke, he recognized the inclination rising within him, the urge to shield himself, to retreat into professional decorum. But this moment demanded transformation. It was time to expose his own vulnerabilities and steer the conversation toward collective accountability. The room remained tense, the weight of unarticulated thoughts stifling, yet Jack sensed a flicker of something, a longing for resolution amidst the turmoil. Graham, the very embodiment of entitled bureaucracy, faced Jack with unyielding skepticism. Are you implying you're going to lead a charge toward introspection? Graham's voice dripped with incredulity. That'll only fracture our already delicate chain of command. Jack's heart raced, a fanning blaze of determination igniting behind his fear. This was not a mere battle for consensus. It was a defining moment. No, Graham, he replied, leaning in, eyes locked onto his rival. I'm inviting us to become something more. Each of us has a role in this evolution. It's not about rank but responsibility. We have to step up. A ripple of murmurs passed through the group. Jack seized the opportunity, sensing an opening. If we stand by and allow this behavior to fester, as we've done for years, how can we expect to foster the community trust we're supposed to uphold? How can we protect those we're meant to serve? He saw the conflicting expressions flicker in his peers, the weary recognition of the truth mixed with the visceral defense mechanisms built over years of policing. Jack understood all too well the cost of subversion in a tightly knit force, the burden of expectations, the loyalty that often meant silence. Yet today, in this moment, perhaps they could rewrite some of those unspoken rules, together. Let us take a step back, Jack pressed, diffusing the tension. This isn't about blame, this is not about one officer's action. It's about how we collectively craft an environment where violence is disallowed, regardless of the provocation. I want to hear your thoughts. We need a dialogue, not just a knee-jerk reaction. The room shifted slightly, some nodding, others crossing their arms defensively. Jack took a breath, feeling a burgeoning resolve surge within him. Today wasn't just about a presentation, it was about collective healing and commitment to progress. But the specter of doubt loomed, mingling with hope. Would Graham finally relent, or was this the beginning of a tug-of-war that would test Jack's leadership? Jack, came a voice from the back, a low, hesitant tone. It was Anna, one of the quieter officers. What do you want this new path to look like? Because that's not clear. Her question sent a jolt through Jack. He'd envisioned the need for change, yet the specifics eluded him. As he opened his mouth to respond, the enormity of his ambition crashed over him. Was he ready to define this path not just for them but for himself? His throat tightened as uncertainty gnawed at him. In that instant, the weight of expectations pressed heavily on his chest. It wasn't just about others' faith in him, this was about deeper self-belief. Could he truly lead not just by proposal but by action? What he didn't realize was that in this moment of hesitation lay another opportunity, one that could shape his identity as a leader if he embraced the challenge and articulated a present vision of his own. Today, we define it together, Jack finally responded, feeling the resolve harden in his bones. But it starts with vulnerability. It starts here and now. As whispers began to surge again, some excited, others filled with doubt, Jack stood resolute. What kind of leader did he want to be amidst this turmoil? And could vulnerability be his strongest ally in the face of conflict? The mounting pressure sharpened around him, and Jack's thoughts turned to the next meeting, where deeper revelations awaited results from his efforts that would either bound them or unravel them completely. Would he find the courage to confront the very roots of division, or would he retreat into safer waters? The clock was ticking, and action loomed. Would they dare to follow him into uncharted territory? The days following the conference meeting advanced with a blurring speed, filled with layers of mounting pressure. Jack's mind revolved ceaselessly around Anna's question. How could he frame a new path that resonated with the experience of every officer in the department, while also reflecting his vision? Each night he tossed and turned, drafting invisible strategies that dissipated with dawn. The weight of that discussion beckoned him toward an inevitable reckoning point one morning. Determined to seek clarity, Jack ventured to the park near the precinct. The soft morning light filtered through the trees, illuminating the path ahead. He inhaled deeply, attempting to tether his spiraling thoughts to the peaceful stillness surrounding him. Instead, his mind oscillated between doubts and ambitions. Was the vision of change he had cultivated merely an idealistic notion? Or could it represent a tangible transformation of his force not just as officers but as human beings willing to embrace their flaws? As he contemplated, Jack spotted a father teaching his child to ride a bike. The boy wobbled, fear etched on his face, yet each time he fell, the father encouraged him gently. "You can do it. Just keep trying." The scene unfolded before him like a bright banner: courage, resilience, and the vibrant encouragement of vulnerable learning. In that moment, something clicked within Jack. His vision for the department could be the same: a culture brave enough to acknowledge its pitfalls while motivating each other toward improvement. Determined, he returned to the precinct, firing up his colleagues' spirits with the mantra of learning through failure. With every interaction leading up to the next meeting, he cultivated a climate ripe for honesty. Each officer gradually began to engage, revealing raw and previously unspoken fears. Discussions evolved from whispers to fervent exchanges. They shared stories of their own mistakes, struggles with assumptions, and poignant moments that left deep scars or lasting lessons. Jack played the initiator role, guiding conversations with authenticity as he shared his own vulnerabilities. However, not all were convinced. Graham, with his staunch reserve, eyed the growing openness with suspicion. During a pivotal session, he stood up, arms crossed, brow furrowed. "This won't work, Jack. What we need is order, firmness in our ranks, not this emotional outpouring. How do you expect us to act in a crisis?" Jack swallowed back frustration. The abrasive reality of Graham's skepticism struck hard. Here lay a fissure threatening to fracture their burgeoning dialogue. "Graham, how can we expect to act effectively if we don't understand and admit our own limitations? Emotions fuel decisions. I need you to trust this process." The room fell silent, and Jack felt the stirrings of uncertainty. Was this reliance on vulnerability truly the right response to the challenges they faced? He darted glances around the room, seeking affirmation, sensing waves of questioning brewing. Just as doubt crept in again, he caught a glimpse of Anna leaning forward, her eyes bright, as she echoed, "I've seen how we can help each other like this. Let us redefine authority not as a measure of strength, but as a call to support." A ripple of agreement surged through some, while others remained hesitant, caught in the duality of old habits and new hope. This tension crystallized Jack's understanding. Leadership didn't merely mean forging ahead alone. It was an ongoing dance of influence and understanding. The pendulum of emotions swung between fear of change and eagerness for revival. As the session drew to a close, Jack sensed he had taken a significant step, yet the lurking skepticism from Graham loomed large. The hard questions were just beginning. The journey to transform their fragile unity into a cohesive force required more than dialogue. Jack pondered as he prepared for the upcoming meeting, the possibility of confronting Graham in a more profound way the moment to face his adversary head-on had arrived. But would he have the strength to confront the entrenched position of institutional authority? The answer felt as elusive as ever, and anticipation gripped him. Change was in sight, yet the path remained fraught with peril. Would Jack manage to secure the internal trust he desperately needed, or would the divides deepen, entangling him in the very fabric of doubt he sought to dissolve? Jack stood at the center of the precinct, deep breath grounding him as he gathered himself to face the challenges ahead. Days of relentless preparation had led to this moment, a pivotal departmental meeting where his vision of transformation would be unveiled, one that embraced vulnerability and accountability. "I appreciate everyone coming together today," he began, projecting a calm yet determined tone. The murmurs faded as attention shifted towards him. What happened in the last meeting highlighted not just an immediate incident but revealed a greater need for self-reflection. It's clear we've been operating in a paradigm that favors compliance over growth, silence over truth. This bold statement reverberated in the room like a clarion call. Officers exchanged glances of curiosity and unease, each grappling with the implications of what he proposed. Graham, the known skeptic, crossed his arms, ready to challenge at a moment's notice. Jack pressed on, "We are not simply officers. We are stewards of trust and guardians of our community's faith in us." Yet trust is a delicate balance. It demands transparency, and more significantly, it requires us to confront our biases and acknowledge our shortcomings. With each passing word, he sensed the collective tension rise, but he met it, locked eyes with his colleagues, willing them to absorb the gravity of his message. Real change begins by fostering an environment where vulnerability is not just encouraged but is the norm. Today, I'm calling on each of you to join me in redefining what it means to wear this badge. Jack's voice strengthened, underscoring the urgency of the moment. We stand at a crossroads. We must decide whether to maintain blind loyalty to the traditional ways or courageously step forward, embracing the discomfort of introspection. This isn't about blame. It's an invitation for transformation. As he spoke, he paused, allowing room for apprehension to bubble and the reality of his proposition to sink in. The walls felt thicker, filled with years of entrenched beliefs, but he could see glimmers of introspection in some of his peers. Together, we can develop new competencies, Jack continued, crafting a vision that held promise. We'll implement training to not only address biases but to actively encourage dialogues that make us a more perceptive force. Trust can only bloom in an atmosphere where understanding reigns. A notable gesture from Anna urged him on, a nod that signaled support. He felt his conviction solidify. He was not walking alone. He sensed the moment shift when Graham finally broke his silence, his tone taut with skepticism. "You think these workshops will change years of culture overnight, Jack? It's naive to believe that vulnerability can eclipse authority." His words sliced through the air, igniting a flicker of apprehension. Jack leaned in, a mixture of fierce determination and humility swirling within him. "No, Graham, I don't expect a miracle, but each step we take toward understanding will dismantle sterile walls of distrust. We are committed to leading our community. We can't fulfill that mission until we recognize our imperfections." Graham's eyes narrowed, contemplation mingled with guardedness. "You're risking everything for this ideal," he shot back, and a palpable tension hung on every word. "Yes, I am. But it's worth the risk if it leads us to authenticity," Jack rebutted calmly but firmly, searching for allies in the room. "Let us be honest, how many of us have felt isolated in this culture? How many have witnessed actions that go against our core values but didn't speak up?" The silence was chilling. Each of his colleagues seemed lost in thought, reflections on their own experiences shaping the atmosphere. As he continued, a pulse of hope flickered. Transforming policing starts with our willingness to evolve. If we don't act now, we may miss the invaluable opportunity to redefine our narrative. Our stories, our courage, and our commitment to growth can redefine what it means to protect and serve. The room shifted, a ripple of conversation igniting as officers exchanged stories of silent battles, failed interactions, and discomforting realizations. Jack's heart raced. He felt walls shifting and perspectives broadening as the need for connection and growth visibly sparked. Then, Anna spoke again. "I've felt that weariness, like I'm walking a tightrope, unsure of having voice or power. But if we're willing to bridge our differences, I want to believe we can shift the tide." Jack clasped his hands together, encouraged by her words. "Yes, that's how it starts. We engage, we converse, and we commit to the changes that can heal not only us, but the communities we serve. Let us form small groups, where we can speak openly about these very vulnerabilities and actively seek solutions together. I need each of you to help shape this," he pleaded earnestly. A chorus of murmurs stirred, the atmosphere changing from resistance to tentative acceptance. Jack seized the moment, fully aware that this was the turning point. "Let us rethink our identity. Together, we can achieve a culture where every officer walks openly with accountability, where honesty compels us to rise for what is right, and where authority is balanced with empathy. Will you join me? A sense of resolve settled over the room. Officers nodded, the prospect of collaboration bringing energy to the conversations. The connectedness took root, an authenticity blooming where before there had been hesitation. In that pivotal meeting, Jack witnessed his surroundings transform. He felt the palpable shift toward trust and understanding materialize amid the exchange. With each voice that shared their vision, he felt a community emerging not just within those walls but a promise echoing out into Maplewood. The weeks ahead would be demanding, but Jack had embarked on this journey with a newfound sense of competence and resolve. He had cultivated both community and courage, shedding self-doubt and emerging not only as a leader but as an integral part of a new narrative. Jack Reynolds, the officer who had struggled against the tide of expectations and his own biases, now stood affirm not just as an agent of change but as the chief people would learn to trust. Acknowledging the importance of accountability, Jack had finally redefined what it meant not only to protect but to serve genuinely. This was his exploration, his transformation, and together, they could weather the storm of resistance. Jack felt pride welling within him, fortified by the knowledge that he had risen not only for himself but for a greater purpose, one that would resonate through every interaction with their community. Now Jack was ready for his new role, to embrace the responsibilities of leadership that awaited him, and to build bridges, strong and resilient bridges where he had once seen only walls. It was a future illuminated by potential, forged through personal growth and mutual respect. With every stride he took toward his vision, he knew they had set forth on the path of change together. And that realization glimmered with unyielding promise. You need to subscribe now to witness the unfolding stories of personal redemption and growth. This is the moment to show your support for those seeking change in their lives. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and spread the message of transformation. Comment below your thoughts on this extraordinary journey and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Join us as we delve into the power of change,